Hey, I love it. I love her voice when she says that. Okay, everybody. Hi, welcome to No Time for Silence. And this is, by the way, thank you so much for being here. This very small shoestring budget, was funded by the Long Beach Forward here in Long Beach, and it's a part of the conversation about uplifting Asian voices, Asian artist voices, as well as community that are partners. Does anyone know who Jonah is?
It could be one of my student. I think I don't know how she got the link,
Okay.
but
Let me see. I'll let her in and see.
oh yeah, that is her, Jonna.
Jana. Okay. All right. Cool. All right. I'll let Jana in, and then that way we'll just have her sit there. She's just gonna observe, right?
Yeah, pretty
Okay.
much.
All right. Great. So yeah, so this is going to be a space for artists and creatives to talk about what they have been doing, and perhaps talk about the concerns that's going on in your community, and what have you done to, if anything, to help highlight or educate around anti-Asian hate going on, and also this show is part of the next one. Some of you may have seen that is Love Standing Its Ground, which is another show uplifting Black Lives Matter, um, and the interconnectedness of the Asian community with Black lives, because they really right now they go hand in hand, right? Partly because a lot of the media that has been shared and the violence has been perpetrated by people of color as well, and that also reinforces the our Asian community, of perhaps not whatever the issue is, to not support that. So why don't we go around the room and introduce? I'll go first, and I'll popcorn. Okay. Hi, everybody. Welcome. My name is Seyon Cypressooth. I'm an artist, as well as putting art shows together like this, and I'm also a community activist and an educator. I will pass it on to Julianne.
And my name is Julianne Huang, and I'm a client. I'm an artist from Momentum Creative, and I enjoy doing art.
Okay.
Chinese. Next.
You enjoy doing art? Okay. Awesome, Julianne. Thank you. Let's call on Phung next, just going across the screen here.
Hi, everybody. Nice to see you all. My name is Phung Huynh. I am a visual artist, mostly drawing, painting, and public art. I'm also a mom, and I teach at a community college. My background, my father's Khmer. He survived the genocide, and my mother's Chinese Vietnamese, and I was born in Vietnam. So as a family, we survived the war and came to the United States. So I'm feeling a lot of love from the space right now, because I know we share that same history together. So I'll pop it corn over to Aragna.
Hi, my name's Aranya Kerr. I am also an artist. I actually went to grad school with Sion, kind of like somewhere in between, but I also work for Momentum Creative, where I curate art shows and also create adaptive tools for a lot of our guys who have physical needs. So I make art tools for them, and I am Khmer, and I immigrated here in the 80s. So yeah, I share a lot of what Phung kind of went through her family. So yeah, and I'm excited to hear what everyone has to say. So thank you, Sion, for putting this together. And I'll popcorn it to Judy.
Hi. I'm an artist, but I'm also a therapist. I went back to grad school 7 years ago, became a therapist. At the moment, I'm putting up a show in downtown Long Beach that deals with what it's like to be female, what it's like to be a kid and be sexually abused. I only see clients that don't have health insurance or can't afford to pay their deductible, and I see them for free. And I don't know what else to say. And I'll add this, a number of my clients are Asian, of different backgrounds. And the thing lately that's really troubling is I have a Taiwanese client that people throw rocks at her and tell her to go back to China. And she said one day she just lost it on the street and started screaming, "I can't go back to China because I'm not from effing China." And when we talked more, and I was also, my first husband was Japanese, and I realized then too that white Americans honestly don't seem to see the difference between any Asian culture. It's like they don't, her yelling, "I can't go back to China, I'm not Chinese," didn't mean anything to the people throwing rocks. Like to them, it's everybody's the same. You're not a white American, you're everything. And like with my first husband, like people were constantly going, "Where are you from?" And he'd go, "New Jersey," and they're like, "Oh, you're Chinese, you're Hawaiian, you're this, and it was endless. It was just endless. And my personal heritage, I'm Native American, Spanish, and Jewish. And, I get some of that, but not nearly like that because, I can look like anything. So I don't get it. Like I'm not wearing my identity on my face. And it's just pretty appalling and troubling and frustrating. Thanks.
Okay, Chantala, you're last but not least important.
How's it going, everyone? My name is Chantal Akamanovan. I'm a Laotian American visual artist here in Chicago, and I also teach at a local university up on the north side of Chicago, Northeastern Illinois University, and I'm glad to be here with you all. We probably shared the same history as well. I had many Cambodian friends growing up, and also Vietnamese friends as well, all during the refugee 80s influx. So we share the same histories. So I'm glad to be here. So thank you, Seon, for inviting me.
All right, great, everybody. Thank you so much for your introduction. As you can see, we're not all one Asian here. I'm Lao, by the way, Lao Cambodian. My parents were Laotian, grandparents were Laotian. They came to Cambodia, and then just decided to stay there at the border. I think they were traders, that traded goods and services, and just decided to stay on the Thailand and the Lao and Cambodian border. But it was on the, I guess, today with the border where it is, we're on the Cambodian side. But I went through the similar refugee experience as Phung and Aragna had shared. As you heard, Judy is a therapist. I've just recently got a mental health certificate. So I've been very aware of, the trauma that people carry with them. And it's also somatic, it just means that it's just throughout your body, your mind, your heart, wherever that is held. So hopefully we'll get into more details of unpacking that with Judy here and with you all sharing. This could be a fun and heavy topic. So I don't know about you, but I got my glass of wine. So I'm ready to go.
Where's our Hennessy?
Yeah.
Oh, there you go.
You guys get something to drink and enjoy yourself. But yeah, let's start off with the first question. And this could just be for any of you that feel like answering. It's like, how are you doing these days as far as, being an artist, what, and then, yeah, actually, let's start with that. How are you doing? Like, what are you doing as an artist these days to cope with what's happening around the violence against Asians? We'll just get into it.
I just create my art and express what I feel while I'm doing my art. Like, show what I express and the actions, what goes through my mind during the Asian hate violence. And I want to share with everyone my message that it needs to stop being judged differently. Doesn't matter if we're race or color. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely, Julianne. It's that's what we all here do, is to express ourselves through our art and getting the message out there. And many of us here at one time or another have been judged based on our refugee status and coming to America as whether, you know, being a woman, being a person of color. We have all gone through that, and it seems like this is just nothing new, you know, based on history that we have seen, that many people that have come before us. It continually, it's just an ongoing fight. Yeah.
Yeah.
Julianne, I love your paintings and the vibrant colors, and I love how it is uplifting. It doesn't confront the racism in a way that's difficult. But when I look at it, it reminds us like we're here because we want to experience joy and have all the things that sustain our mental well-being and happiness. So that's what I really appreciate about your paintings.
And I want to stand up for people like myself who have issues and to help them stand up for themselves too.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does help. I'm sure, you know, they are very inspiring, and I'm sure it's influencing a lot of people right now, especially in this circle, in this meeting as well. How
Yeah,
about
I mean,
Mhm.
I think, you know, even just kind of dealing with the topics, you know, I mean, it's all heavy, you know, as a kid growing up, you know, it's very like, you see it, but it's not very like, you know, you kind of don't really feel it, you know, and then now you see it and then you feel it more impactful because it not only affects you, but it affects your like parent, you know, it affects your like elderly. And, you know, like to me, it's like, hey, you can beat up on me, that's fine, I'm cool with that. But if I see my parents get beat up, that's a whole nother level of like, you know, shock to a system. Like it's someone elderly, you know, like the woman in Chinatown in Oakland, you know, like that's a whole nother like, so it's very heavy. And, you know, it's like as an artist, we're just kind of like absorbing all this heaviness, and, you know, everyone is expelling it out differently. I mean, I haven't really done much to expel the work, but, you know, I'm absorbing it all, you know, and it's like, wow, I'm just kind of waiting for the opportunity to get to that moment, you know, seeing what comes about, you know, and like Julianne said, you know, she's absorbing it and doing it the same way, you know, so it's getting heavier, you know, because we don't have that childhood blinders on anymore, you know, we have the adult looking at, you know, so.
Yeah, thank goodness we don't have that anymore. I mean, I used to live in a fantasy world thinking everybody was like, oh my God, everybody loves,
everyone's cool.
Yeah, everyone's cool.
Good.
Everybody loves you, little Seon.
Yeah.
Right before quarantine, I want to say a few months before, I was crossing the street to pick up my kids from after school care, and some dude called me an effing gook. I'm like shocked because I haven't heard that for so long. And then of course it triggered, right, all these memories about us being war refugees and, you know, the anti-Asian sentiment. And then that passed. And then when we went on lockdown, one of my students who's Asian, she said, she was called a gook and she didn't even know what that meant. And I had to
Mm.
explain what that meant. And that was like really difficult to do. So I know you guys are educators here too. Like, how did it affect you in terms of supporting your students? And while like you have to support yourself going through that, you know?
Yeah, I haven't had any adult experiences being called any names or, you know, being treated in any type of way here in Chicago, fortunately. And I haven't had any of my students come to me with that experience either. Maybe it's just because I'm in a different type of circle where you know, there's not much ignorance, and you know, a lot of us are grown-ups, and I try to keep myself in a space where you know, it's more progressive thinking, and also you know, people who love each other. I'm not saying that does, you know, hate doesn't exist, but I just haven't had the overwhelming you know, expressive of hate towards me, like many. I'm looking at your background. It looks like you guys are in California.
In LA, yeah,
Okay.
that's the
So-
crazy part,
so-
right? Where everyone's liberal, we have all kinds of folks. That's why I'm like, what did you
Yeah.
come to? You know?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's like you guys are should be more liberal than we are here in Chicago, and you guys are. It seems like you guys are getting it more than we are here.
Maybe because there's more of us here.
That's possibly
Right,
it.
like
Yeah, because
New York, San Francisco, right? And
Yeah.
I loved it when that ama like beat the crap out of that white boy.
Mhm.
Yeah, because I live on the south side of Chicago, and I'm probably the third Asian person in the community,
Wow.
and I haven't had it yet. So maybe they're just afraid to say it because you know, because I'm the third one in the community, and then they're just like, you know, carefully, like, you know, with their words, but I haven't had the experience yet. But yeah, maybe you guys are the numbers of Asians are bigger in California, while they're over here it's very small. And yeah, I haven't had, you know, harsh words said to me since I was young. So as an adult, I haven't had it towards me. And of course, you know, when I exert myself in art spaces or spaces with you know, liberals, you know, it's really it's you know, the language is very safe, and you know,
Mhm.
so.
Judy, do you want to add
Not
any?
to say that that doesn't exist.
Yeah, I mean, one of the, am I muted or am I?
You're good. Mhm.
Okay. It's one of the
You're good.
problems that's been happening for me as a therapist is, you know, I've got 3 or 4 people that I've been working with for a year. And for, you know, at the beginning of COVID, we were dealing with their childhood trauma about things that didn't necessarily have anything to do with where they were from or their race or how they identified. It was things that had happened, like sexual abuse when they were very, very young, things like that. Now, though, because of this situation, excuse me while I kill my dog. Hey, he's got a thing about bugs and there's a fly on the window. Is now we have to deal with that they're afraid all the time. And because they already have trauma, so they see the world as not a safe place. There is no safe place in their world, right? Their parents weren't safe, didn't protect them, or were the perpetrators, you know? And now they're not safe going anywhere. They're not safe on the bus. They're not safe at the grocery store. And so it's triggering a huge amount of fear and emotion. And I notice that now we'll have to deal with things like one of them will get mad at a friend, and instead of being able to say, oh, you know, you're mad at your friend, like, how do you think you could talk to them to work that out. They're so angry, they snap right into rage because they're afraid, right? So they snap right into rage. So then it gets really, really hard to deal with. It's just like super over the top. And, like when your emotions are that heightened, in therapy speak, it throws a blanket over the left side of your brain, and you can't have, you can't intellectualize what's going on. You can't have the left side of your brain, be thoughtful or reasonable or make higher function decisions, because you've got this blanket of emotion smothering it. And I mean, I have to say that in recent weeks, particularly, I've been kind of frustrated that I don't feel like there's anything I can say or do that breaks through that level of fear that's just like built into their body and built into their everyday experience. And, the only thing I can really compare it to one is either, having grown up in a Jewish family, listening to my relatives talk about the war, they were all survivors. Or, being a woman and being afraid all the time, walking home at night and, constant that, but it's kind of on a different level right now. I mean, I'm too young to have lived through World War II. Directly, I only have that experience from my family. And this is triggering direct experience. Like a couple of my clients are also refugees. And, yeah, it's pretty overwhelming. I find it really overwhelming. And I find also, like, on an art level, like the piece I'm doing in downtown LA, in downtown Long Beach, it's a really serious subject matter. And I find that the people in the gallery and the people around don't want to deal with that really serious subject matter. Like, they want to go, oh, but your work's so pretty. But it's so pretty. It's like, yeah, but look at the content. The content is not pretty. Yeah, and it just makes people really, really uncomfortable. And in a way, like when you were saying about liberals, that the language is safe. I don't know, like I find that that's even more problematic, that it gets even harder to talk about this stuff on a real emotional, deep level, because everybody's so PC. They're so careful about their language and what they say, that they don't really talk about so much, what's really going on with them emotionally, And like I said, also in my experience, white Americans don't make a distinction between someone who's Laotian or Cambodian or from Taiwan or Korea, or, they're just like, no, you're all the same. And just like my first husband, it was like, people would, like hold up a piece of Chinese art and go, oh, from your culture. And he'd go, no, I'm Japanese. Like, well, what's the difference? There's no difference. Like, but there really is, like there really is. But yeah. So.
Yeah. So I know it's most of us, pretty much all of us here, have seen that and experienced that one too. So leading into another question is the impact on our immediate family, perhaps, or close friends. So how do you hear talk about keeping your family safe, or your parents or grandparents, and because that's a tough question, right, to bring up, because like a lot of the videos I have seen, oh my gosh, they're so heartbreaking. And I've just recently seen the headlines with some of them, that one of the women was in a coma, and then they really didn't think she wasn't going to make it, and then they just had to donate her organs to benefit others. But how do you talk about with your family or kids about these issues and keeping them safe, and just to be aware of their surrounding, right?
Yeah, definitely. It seems like a lot of times, like this stuff, like the attacks only happen to those who are vulnerable and old and those who can't defend themselves. And my mom, she lives alone, and she goes out walking and stuff like that. And she's also aware the news and aware of things happening on online and stuff like that. So she's really we talk about like when you go out walking and stuff, she tells us like she is safe and or being aware of her surrounding, even if it's not a racial attack. It might just be an elderly attack, or it might just be an attack just because, you know what I mean. And we always talk about just watching your back and being safe, and growing up in Chicago, it was always that tactic of being aware of our surrounding. And also we lived in gang infested blocks, so it's it's not a new thing for us to be aware, and also to keep ourselves conscious of what's happening around us at all times. You know what I'm saying? So, definitely the conversation with our family is always still, watch your back at all times. Yeah, that's how I've always been since I was little. So even moving into a neighborhood that has no gang activity, it's still a never fight, always fight. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I ain't refugee reflex too,
Yeah.
I got a bat under my bed.
Yeah, I have a machete by my door, so come on in.
Oh my God.
I gotta up my game.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I might not have a gun, but I might chop you up though.
Yeah, it's really a refugee, a survival instinct that we've all been experiencing. For me, when I came to this country, I was, transplanted into Iowa, which was a small town in the Midwest. But I know I've heard other people that got relocated here, and then they got put into like the bad part of New York, for example. And then so they just go from one kind of like from the pan into the fire kind of, I feel, because now you have the language barrier, and then you have this neighborhood that that perhaps want to pick on you because you're different, and then now you can barely speak English, if that. So it's multiple layers.
Yeah, like I said, like the those who prey on people are those who they think that they can't defend themselves, and as newcomers, not knowing the language and dressing differently, smelling differently, we just have that vulnerable, like we can't defend ourselves, like appearance, you know what I'm saying? So giving that identity to someone who's a prey, they're gonna attack and also prey on us. And once we get a footing of the language and the culture, the way of dress and the way of whatever, assimilating into Americanism, I think after that it becomes like we become the predator, not the prey. You know what I mean? When Asians develop our own gangs, then we get to compete now. You know what I mean? Like you know what I'm saying? Things like that. I think like if we, I shouldn't, I don't know where I'm getting at, but but I'm just saying like I don't know. I just lost my train of thought, but
yeah. Well, I just want to add to Chantala what you're saying. When I was growing up here in Long Beach too, many of the other immigrant community, some of the African American community were already here, and then now you have these Asian refugees coming in, and then you have our Latino immigrant community coming in there too, and you have these various languages and difference in culture, and I think at least the kids that I were growing up with, we were just, kids in the neighborhood, just playing and going to school, and then you would get picked on, and then just to your point about, people forming their own gang as a safety unit, because, frankly, people get tired of being kicked around all the time.
Right.
So you're like, you're not going to put up with this anymore.
Mhm.
And so, and there's a sense of empowerment about that when it was needed. So, geez, back in the 90s here in Long Beach, many of my cousins and friends and even brothers, they were shot, and then they were either told to move out of the state to survive, or that was the thing. People moved to Washington State, my siblings moved to Las Vegas. It was, and many of them are in jail for various crimes, and some are still there. It's really a tragedy.
Yeah, I mean, I think to like put everything all back to thing, it's like, as far as the discourse, I'm glad that you're like having this, because usually a lot of Asians, like like my parents, it's like they rather remain silent than like speak up. So it's like, I think, to have us be more aware of the environment, it's like, yeah, Chicago is one way, but California is another way. Like when you travel here, Chantala, like it might be different. You know what I'm saying? Just like if I travel over there, it might be different. So, where like, no matter what, that fear of like Asian hate is still happening no matter where we go. And, it's looming all over us. And yet we're not having a discourse about it as much. And like, I don't think like I talk with my parents about it as much either, because it's like they don't want to talk about it, because that's another layer of trauma that they would have to face. You know what I'm saying? So it's like there's all these layers that they're kind of like, so us being the next generation, I'm glad that we're having more like discourse about like the fear, the fear factor that is kind of like is always surrounding us. But like you said, if we form not a physical gang, but a mental gang, like how would that look like against our rival, who is like trying to like, because their ignorance is trying to get up on us. And it's like, nah, man, we're just as educated as you are, we're as strong as you are. And, and we're uniting, because I think there's a lot of like, there's a lot of prejudice inside the Asian community in general, let alone like American. So it's like, hey, if we unite and we start talking, creating more of a dialogue, like we can move. I feel like we could move a little bit better, so.
I'm glad you brought that up, Aranya, because of colorism within our AAPI community. And, going back to Judy about your first husband who's Japanese American, when that happened with incarceration, right, everyone's like, I'm not Japanese. And they came up with all these racist diagrams about, how Japanese look like and how to distinguish Japanese from Chinese. And even now with this virus, like everyone's like, I'm not Chinese. So that creates schism within, right, the Asian community.
Another level. Yeah, I have two things I wanted to say. One is the older generation. I know for Jews, the older generation won't talk about a lot of this stuff, not just because it brings up trauma, but because for them, you don't want to question authority because the authority is so powerful. You don't want to like bring a lawsuit against somebody. You don't want to talk to a policeman. You don't, that's too dangerous. It's too dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
But the other question I had is, do any of you feel an obligation to address these issues with your art? Because it's not for me the work that I do about female empowerment, the kind of art that I make. It wasn't like I started out feeling like I had an obligation to make that. It just ended up bubbling up to the surface. It wasn't like I made a conscious decision, oh, I want to make this kind of art because I'm a woman and I'm fighting against all this misogyny. It just happened. And so I'm curious whether any of you like actually have a conscious feeling of obligation, or do you deal with that with your art or not?
I don't think I don't think for me it was an obligation, but I think it was more of a natural instinct to tell the the refugee experience, and just sort of like it was there was a void of the of visibility in the arts, right? And I just thought that it's really important, not just that it's obligated for me to do it, but it was important for me to put the refugee experience in the big conversation in art, and it's there is a big void in art. Asian voices in art. The arts, when I say art, is like the capital art, right? A-R-T, capital letters, right? And and I think it's important that we have our voices in there. That way, the others don't tell the others don't tell our stories. I rather see Asian faces painted by Asian people. You know what I mean? And in the galleries we see Asian paintings, but they're painted by Euros. So it's for me it's more of an instinct to have my story be told by myself.
Absolutely. And that our voices are loud in our art too, that we're not going to just make decorative, easy to digest, lovely looking paintings, right? But I'm going to put it up in your face and let you know how I feel. I mean, at least that's how I felt the last few years, and doing stuff I never did before, because we're taught like, this is not your country, you're a guest here, just keep it low, don't make waves, right? And so we have that to deal with it culturally, politically, in our jobs, and then how do we do it in our art, right? So yeah, recently I was dealing with how ironic it was that, after surviving war, I think you remember this, we come here to this country and play with G.I. Joes, like the heck, you know what I mean? So recently, I did a piece about that and just like took a bunch of G.I. Joes and spelled out the word good, threw it, threw it in the face. Like, you tell me what this is about. This is what you're doing to us,
Yeah, totally. Exactly. When I paint my paintings, that's the reason why I paint large. If you see something painted some large, it means it's important, and also you can't ignore it. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like my art and also the Asian voices, refugee voices have always been ignored. And when I painted something large, you can't ignore it. You have to go see it. Even if you're trying to not see it, you're gonna see it. You know what I'm saying? So being visible in art, and also visible in society, it's very important. Yeah.
Thank you for that, everyone. Let's ask Julianne. How about? I know your work does not appear political, but it is in a way shifting the viewer to look at something that is more positive, or appreciating what they have around them within nature and the environment. So do you want to add anything to what we've talked about so far, Julianne, or maybe just about your work?
I'm just trying to share a message with the world that my art is telling them that we could express ourselves through our painting. It's like our voice. I hope that they will change their heart for thinking negative views of different violences that we have.
Yeah, it's I love to believe that too. That our work that could help change people. And I also want to just hope that when people see beautiful images, that somehow it would trigger or perhaps shift their narrative a little bit about how they see the world, especially with the Asian artists and creators out there. So speaking of that, and creating content by those Asian voices, Asian stories telling other Asian stories, I get so excited now that I'm seeing many books out there written by Asian artists, Asian writers, and I just like somebody had mentioned earlier about how the European artists have done Asian work and images, and then that way we just feel like we just have no control, even within the history book, right? We've seen nothing but white men and very little white women out there that are outnumbered by the men. And that's another topic of discussion. But but for us, I started to change the narrative about supporting Asian artists as well as writers, because how are we going to uplift each other if we don't start doing it like right here and right now? We're in this discussion. So how do you all feel about that?
100 times 100. Absolutely. Absolutely. And the diversity of Asian writers, like especially Southeast Asian folks of our generation now, not that we've been here 2 generations, there are more of us who are scholars and getting degrees in writing. So that's why we see a surge now in more of us out there publishing and being vocal on films and all that, right? Because Japanese and Chinese Americans have been here longer, so the Asian conversation has been more defined by them. So it's really exciting to see more Lao, Cambodian, Thai, Vietnamese scholars and artists and writers out there. Ocean Vuong, Viet, all these incredible folks.
Yeah, I think it's awesome, and also just because we say that Lao artists, Cambodian artists, writers, and Southeast Asian artists, it doesn't mean that they don't exist in the world, but we just don't exist in America.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Because they make art in Laos too, and Thailand and Cambodia, what I'm saying? And they make polarizing work and work out there too. It's just that there's a society of who says yes and who says no. You know what I mean? And we're sort of like a part of that. And I think the surgence of Southeast Asians American voices and art, it's popping slowly, but there's very little of us, and it's America is still slow at accepting our voices in art. Yeah,
you gotta change the gatekeepers.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's exciting.
Another thing is no one's watching Hollywood movies anymore because Hollywood movies suck, but everyone's watching these Korean and Japanese movies.
Yeah, didn't someone won for Parasite last year?
Yeah.
So that was, I think it's the changing of the narratives is really happening faster at a greater speed because there's more educators, there's more filmmakers, there's more, and so we're all, and then plus social media has kind of broke everything kind of open, kind of leveled out the playing field. Before, we're reduced to the galleries, right? Galleries showing, Asian American, or the museum showing Asian American, where now it's you know what? I saw this guy's work on Instagram. It's fucking sick. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
It's
yep.
So that moves faster, and that tells us another story. And I think, I'm excited about that the changing world, but I think that excitement also kind of leads to fear of, the other, of the white America, because it's they're taking control of their narrative, and maybe that's where it's all kind of stemming from. It's we're actually finally taking control of our narrative and banding together and forming our own alliances, and and we don't need all the establishment to kind of dictate where we can go and when we can't go. So I mean, I'm all for it. I think it's exciting, and to just talk a little bit about Julianne, I think, for someone is discovering her voice, I think it's exciting. She's barely starting, but just the immense talent that is laid inside her, it's you know, just the one piece about Asian hate and the mask. And it's like, that's where like I see the more power going, and she's taking control of that, you know, like she's writing her own narrative too, you know, by us having this dialogue and by us in social media, you know, it's like, that's what's exciting.
Yeah, I want to throw some names out there since we're talking about art. There's because, you know, honestly, these are not like common names yet, right? Because we are just really coming out in a sense of supporting each other and recognizing great works out there. And one of them, writer and poet, is his name is Brian Thao Wara, a Lao American poet. And so this, you know, there's another person here that written a short story, How to Pronounce Knife, by Sovankam Tamawongsa. And oh, there you go. Yeah, there you go. I read that book too. You know, it's really amazing and heartbreaking stories in there, and it's very subtle. And if you know the narrative and the cross intersection of it, Chantal is shaking his head, so he knows what I'm talking about. And it's just like, man, this is like, it just simmers, and you're just like, oh, when I read each story, I was like, I'm just so sad. I just want to go back to in time and fix this damn scene. And the other one is called After Parties. It's by Anthony Vesna, who recently died overdosed, actually last December. But that's I haven't read that book yet, but I know it's getting a lot of, you know, coverage too with NPR. And this is part of, I think this is part of the discussion that should come up, is that we have to celebrate and talk about, you know, people doing great things. And Anthony, you know, was a queer Cambodian writer that, and with, you know, with even growing up in an Asian community, with an Asian, most likely many Asian community or household is conservative, right? And
Absolutely.
so, yeah, and to be queer and in that environment must have been challenging for him as well, and to be able to be different and then to be a creative writer could also pose a challenge to the family. So anyone else have another name perhaps that you may have? If not, you can just look it up. And the trick about working at home is you can just Google it. But I just have so many people that I was like, oh my gosh, there's even like Aragna mentioned social media, and there's different groups that I belong to, and they would say, okay, here's a list of books by Cambodian writers or Asian artists that you should look into. And I was like, oh man, you know, I would do screenshots of them to collect for later on, honestly, just for me.
I'm glad you reminded me about the after parties, because yeah, he was so young, and it was so tragic that he just died right before like his debut novel, you know. But I love that you brought up writing, because it's English, it's not our native language, but English in itself is not monolithic anymore, right? Like even listening to Chantala, oh, he's Chicago man, like, he's speaking Chicago. You know, like we've owned English in our own way. So that's pretty dope, you know. And Julianne put Crazy Rich Asians, of course.
Yeah, actually,
I'm just trying to find these names. I'm not good with names. Like I'm just good at like seeing it and then naming, but I just can't come up with names.
Yeah. I think that's part of the I think selected amnesia that we've gotten. You know, we're just, oh my gosh, I caught myself the other day. I was like, why can't your name be something easier? That's what I was thinking, you know, like Kevin Smith or something. I don't know. I don't know why that snuck into my head. I was like, oh, damn, what happened to your head, Seon? You know? I was like,
somebody asked me what it was I was doing at 5, and I went, damn, there's no way in the world I'm remembering your last name. Like, no way.
That's
Yeah.
fine too. And it's
So nobody pronounces my last name right either because it's Hungarian. So, but still, you know, yeah.
How
Yeah,
do you pronounce it? Is it Kepes?
it's Kepes.
Kepes.
Yeah. In Hungarian, an ES is always like an SH.
Kepes.
But yeah, so yeah, that's,
Oh, here I've been calling you in my head, Judy Keeps.
yeah, everybody does.
Oh, did I? Okay, Kepes. All right, so let's see. What about then? Okay, so I know we cover a lot, and it's almost 5 o'clock here, or almost 6 o'clock. And Chantala, you're like 2 hours ahead of us in
Yeah.
Chicago.
I'm past my dinner time.
Yeah.
Don't get
So let's go do 2 more questions, and then we could wrap this up. So like, what would you say to a potential bully or abuser out there? I mean, what was something that perhaps that you just want to ask them, or perhaps to speak on from a therapist or an Asian artist perspective?
I don't know. I posted a whole lot of, you know, I have a Buddhist meditation practice, right? I follow Theravada Buddhism. And I posted a whole lot of Thich Nhat Hanh on Facebook about, you know, learning what your enemy is afraid of, what they believe in, and that you have to understand that to your DNA in order to have any possibility of peace, that you need to embrace them, need to talk to them one-on-one, which is a great idea in, you know, perfect world. But when somebody's throwing rocks at you and telling you to go back to China, you know, a place you've never been and your parents aren't from there, you know, how do you embrace that person on the street in a way, like, you know, if you have time on a one-to-one, you can do it. I've had when I was working at a treatment center, I had a white supremacist as a client. I was doing an assessment, and they rolled their sleeves up and had swastikas tattooed down to their wrists. And I thought, oh crap, you know, how are we dealing with this guy? But after 90 days, he wouldn't go back to his family. And he said, everything I learned was wrong. You know, so it gave me a lot of hope. You know, racism is learned. It can be unlearned, right? But when you're in the moment faced with a bully or somebody who's threatening your well-being, that's a really difficult question, is how would you get through to them? You know, how do you get through to them in a loving kindness way that would change their mind, right? You want to change their mind. So
Judy, I'm Buddhist too, and my favorite auntie says sometimes you got to put Buddha aside. And I feel like there are times, I think like we need to have space to express our anger too, especially at that moment where somebody's throwing rocks, because right, we're taught not to express them. I feel like as Asian American folks, like you know what? Sometimes like, look, I'll tell you I'm mad right now. I'll cut you right now. You know, that's okay. But that's not where we want to stay. I understand that. That's when I invite the Buddha back after I have my moment, you know what I mean? And then I'll remember, yes, hurt people hurt others, and we have to transform our suffering and all that good stuff. But I feel like it's okay for us to be angry too and express that. You know?
I just want to share a really quick little story that my Dharma teacher just told about a woman who was saying that she had been sexually assaulted in the street, and that she applied loving kindness, and the Dharma teacher said, did you have your umbrella with you? And she said, yes, of course. And he did you smack him in the face with all loving kindness with the umbrella? Like, yes, there are times when you should definitely smack them in the face.
Thank you.
Yeah, I definitely agree with the being like a model minority. I am so tired of that. You know, honestly, I was taught at an early age to stay on, be a good little boy, and there's a lot of damage that I endured and have dealt with. And part of it, I mean, going through the mental health trauma was re-triggering, but you know, you have to talk about a lot of things that is painful, but then you come out of it, right? And what I choose to do now is just to, you know, to have a voice and to speak up for myself and for my community and the people that have been marginalized. because I think there's just so many bias on many levels within different certain groups. But then if you know, you need to speak up, or otherwise you're doing many of the people a disservice.
Yeah, definitely. I think checking people with their foolishness it's important as well. Not, if we overhearing something and someone's acting foolish or saying something foolish things, I think it's potential for us to voice our opinions on correcting people's biases. You know what I'm saying? Even if it's not about Asians, it could be something about others. You know what I mean? And correcting that could be, mindful for them, because they might not see it as that they are in the wrong. But if we as bystanders don't correct these wrongdoings, then it'll keep happening.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I mean, if I was confronted by a bully, I would do what the older Asian lady did in Oakland. I'm sorry, just if I could, I will. Because it's like you're communicating to me with force, and in the moment, it's like force will be met with force. And then after we can have a sit down, we can talk about why.
Yeah,
but
or not.
or not. Yeah, or not.
Because if someone is really aggressive with their voices, and they're pretty close, you're allowed to punch them.
Yeah.
You're allowed to choke the shit out of them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Choke them.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'm communicating it the same thing that you're communicating back, right? If you're like,
Exactly.
hey, anger with me, I'm going to be angry with you. I mean, again, like Phung said, we're always quiet, and it's like, we're not that docile Asian that come into this country. We're all educators here too. So if you're going to come back at me with that, then let's have it out.
Yeah, don't just lay there being somebody's punching bag. I mean,
right.
I think we endure enough of that already.
Right. Absolutely.
Julianne, do you want to add anything to this discussion before we switch over to the last question?
Yeah, and we gotta teach them a lesson not to beat us or harm us. And when they want to make them think twice before they abuse us.
Mhm.
That's it. Yeah.
That's it.
It's amazing how powerful language and being vocal, can be, because I think a lot of times when they sense blood, or when they just keep going, but then, when they see another fang or whatever else come back at them, they're going to think twice.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Yeah. Great point. Okay, so I know many of you here have amazing things happening. Phung, you're doing something with the immigrant office. I know, Aranya, you have you're creating some new partnership and new tools. Chantala, you're also doing a record store. You just open up. Judy, and you have a show coming up next week.
Saturday.
Right, this Saturday. And Julianne, I don't know what you're doing, but let's go back, and you can share though, but let's go back with Phung and share what the amazing things you are doing with your art, or anything else that you'd like to just share out right now.
Sure, I just finished a big art installation. It's my first sculpture made of Corten steel. And it was to recognize the history of forced sterilizations at LA County USC Hospital. So at the hospital during the 60s and 70s, they sterilized over 200 Mexican mothers without consent. So these mothers would go deliver their babies, and as they're laboring, given papers to sign, they didn't know what they were signing, and the doctors would just tie their tubes. So I'm very honored to make work to apologize to these mothers and reveal this history. And then the other thing that I'm really excited about, and ties into what I just finished, is being an artist in residence with the Office of Immigrant Affairs. And it goes back to our roots, like supporting the immigrant community. And during COVID, our immigrant communities are the most affected. There are essential workers, they're afraid. So I see being an artist as being a servant to we serve our community. So I feel very lucky to have that opportunity.
Congratulations. I know I've been seeing your posts. I mean, I was like, oh, I'm just snooping by and see what Phung's doing. And I'm really excited for you. And I know the LA Art County has also put a bio and your picture on there too. So it's just an amazing accomplishment. Aragna, what are you up to?
Well, I mean, up to like multiple things. Yes, I am curating a show. The next one, it's called No Shadow Kick. You know, I don't know if you guys know the terminology, but it's basically, you know, like if you grew up watching like Kung Fu movies, it's that. And, but I wanted to base on like, it's artists that use their foot to make art in our company. That's what a lot of our artists use. And, you know, basically using the body movement in order to create like these abstract pieces, you know, like using their energy. So that's one show I want to put together, and just combining like everything that I know culturally, but infusing it into like the world of, you know, outsider art, I guess. So, and yeah, and that's pretty much, and then I'm, you know, again, I've continued designing adaptive tools for, like now we partnered up with children with disabilities. We over at PTN. I don't know if you guys know where that is, but there's one out in Long Beach and there's one out in Torrance. It's some of a therapy network. So I've been kind of making stuff for them now, and it's exciting to, I mean, again, you know, as artists, we're always, you know, looking to help out like the community. I mean, so like, it's a nice way to, now I'm able to kind of reach the spectrum from like children to adults now. So it's like I can kind of see like what that world will look like for them and kind of create all these adaptability for them now. So it's, I don't know, it's just see how it all unfolds, but I'm excited to kind of push my thinking process forward. I mean, I think I always say adaptability, it's kind of like we should say it's like a refugee terminology, because we're always like having to adapt to our environment. So it's like it becomes really natural. And then I'm trying to imply the same kind of philosophy into like the disability community, right? You know, it's like you just need adaptation, you know, instead of a rice cooker, you know, you get a bowl, you know, like all these other things that we did to adapt to America. So
yeah. Well, you definitely are enhancing and changing lives, you know, through your tools and your creation. And I'm really glad you're out there supporting people like Julianne and other people that you work with in the community. So thank you for all your creation.
thanks, man.
And Chantala, so what have you been up to? I've seen some posts and I'm excited.
Yeah.
Sounds like in Chicago.
Yeah, you know, on the art side, I'm in a group exhibition opening next month. It's in Dallas, Pennsylvania, I believe. It's at Polly Friedman Art Gallery, and I forget the university, but it's up out there. I didn't even know that Dallas, Pennsylvania exists, so it's a new thing for me. So that show opens next month. Well, and then me and my fiance has been working on opening a record shop. We've got our keys a couple weeks ago, and then we're building out the shelves and all that stuff to get the shop going. You know, I've been a record collector since I was 14 years old.
Mm-hmm.
So I have a pretty bulky record collection. So now it's time to take my knowledge of records into the business of selling records. So that'll be open end of this month. What else? Yeah, I've just been putting all my time since the pandemic to get the shop going, and finally it's about to open in a couple of weeks. So I'm really excited for that. And in the shop it's also an art gallery. So you know, records and art, it's a sort of like a good combination.
Mm-hmm.
So on the walls will be art, and on the shelves will be music. So that's what we've been working on. So, and I'm also using my connections to, artists to show art there. So I'm using all my my lifetime connections and put it all in place.
That's exciting. Yeah, it's like I know, with stores and having foot traffic. I mean, having a gallery in there, it sounds like it's amazing combination of
Yeah.
showcasing art as well, and people browse through the stores and record shops while they're there. So awesome. Good
Yeah.
luck with that.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Judy, so you mentioned a little bit about you have a show coming up Saturday.
At the Loiter Gallery downtown Long Beach. It's a life-size walkthrough installation with another thing that I did that's called the Dollhouse. And yeah, it's all about being abused as a child. Though, like I said, there's a lot of pushback. Like the gallery keeps wanting to focus on, it's beautiful. And we want children to come. I was like, yeah, but it's about being abused as a child, right? And they go, yeah, but it's beautiful. It's like, okay. So yeah, people don't really want to talk about that, but when you walk in the space, it's going to be a little difficult to avoid because, yeah, large.
Very good. I know I've been seeing your posts, and I've seen lots of your drawing on there. I never really understood what it really is about. It's a little bit of kind of like these illustrations. They just look so like
Renaissance prints.
Yeah.
Renaissance prints. Yeah.
There you go.
Well, I'm giving an artist talk at 6 on Saturday. So yeah, so I'll be talking about that, about art history and misogyny and child sexual abuse, all very lighthearted subjects you want your children to come to, but okay. Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Well, I'm gonna be there. Yes, I know that's a busy day for all of us, for both of us here at least.
Well, I'm also hoping that after I bought a house in Long Beach, and I'm hoping when this pandemic stops strangling us, that we can do some workshops at my house, because I have space here to do some art therapy workshops. I used to do them with women, and I want to do a bunch with kids. And anybody who wants to come and do them with me, you're more than welcome. I would love partnership in this. So
yeah, definitely. I'll keep you in mind. I know lots of community members that could use a space and just a place to gather, especially with your background and being a mental health therapist as well. All right, Julianne, what do you have exciting going for you?
I just finished a 3D pot that Aranya had taught me.
Yeah. So Julianne's like she's like my little amazing like student, like anything that I throw out at her, she's like, oh, I'll take that and then like run with it. So like I've been teaching her like the 3D machine, and then so she's like learning how to like, use 3D, and eventually maybe she can make her own tools and stuff like that, and or help her friends make the tools. But as an artist, I think she's going to be in a show in Baltimore, like a physical show, and then also like a online show. So yeah, I found this like student that I could like mold, and yeah, it's been amazing like to see her growth.
That's great. Yeah, it's I mean, it's amazing to have a student or another person that just loves to learn and want to be there. And Julianne, you have an amazing mentor here, so don't let him get out of your sight. Right?
Or the other way,
Yeah.
I'm not letting her out of my sight. Nuh-uh.
There you go. Yeah, and so yeah, with me, I'm sharing. I have a show that I'm organizing coming up this Saturday as well. It's opening from 1 to 3 in the afternoon, and then from there I'll go to Judy's show that evening. But it's a leaping from this topic that we're talking about with against anti-hate, just anti-hate in general. But this topic just tends to be more about Asian focused. But the other one is a little bit more diverse. I have African American artists in there and poets and Brian Dwan, is political artist in his work. A lot of Vietnam themes that's surfaced, and a lot of it is like against human rights violations. So it's a small show, but surrounded by the theme of love, but yet the undercurrent of it is very political, right? How could you not have this anti-hate topic without looking at the politics and the racial injustice that has been happening throughout this country for hundreds of years? Yeah. So anyway, thank you so much, you all, for being here and participating in this show and this discussion. It's really lively, and I wish you all joy and safe, and your family protected during this pandemic. And yeah.
Thank you, Seyhan.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And it was like awesome to like hear everyone. Like, I love to collaborate. So if you guys want to hit me up anytime, whatever, like I'm here. And like, I think that's where the power of art is. And it's like when you go to grad school and stuff like that, you just want to make your own shit, you're just kind of like, oh, I don't care about it. But as you get older, it's like you realize like you can move mountains better if you're like, collaborate with everyone. So like I would love to collaborate. So just throwing that out there.
No doubt.
Call me.
Okay, cool. Awesome.
Sounds good. Yeah, you all have each other's email connection already. So
All right.
thank you all. Have a
Yeah,
good
thank
night.
you, everyone. Yeah,
Yep.
take care, everybody.
Have a good night. Peace.
Bye, Julianne. Bye.
Bye.